Hey everybody, I am here today to talk to you real quick about some tips on how to reclaim some of your time for writing so that you can write every single day. Okay, so one of the biggest tips and strategies that I really found that changed my entire writing career was writing sprints. And I know a lot of you out there do writing sprints. This came from NaNoWriMo. They started doing this and I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. And this was way back in I think 2008 when I first started doing it. They were running some writing sprints on Twitter and I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. And then after Nano was over, I sort of stopped doing it and found that it was difficult. It's like if I said to myself, okay, I've got from 10 a.m. to noon to write, I would come out of that 2-hour section of writing time with almost nothing done. And it was like, oh my gosh, how was it that I was getting so much done during those writing sprints when I only had 20 minutes or something to write, and then I give myself 2 hours and I can't write anything. Well, I don't know. I'm sure there's, probably all kinds of studies done on the psychology of giving yourself that focused time limit. And I am not going to go into all of that, but I do know just for myself, from a personal perspective, when I focus my time in and I say, okay, I only have from this time to this time to get my writing done, or it's not getting done at all, I'm going to focus in. But if I give myself a really long stretch of time, like 2 full hours to sit down and focus without running a timer or tracking my word count, I will get less done than if I try the Pomodoro Technique. If you're not familiar with the Pomodoro Technique, this was a technique developed in the 80s by, I think, a guy named Francesco Cirillo. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but he developed this with a kitchen timer that looked like a tomato. So that's where Pomodoro comes from. It's tomato in Italian, I believe. So he had that old-fashioned kitchen timer and he would turn it to 25 minutes and he would work on one single project, one single focus for those 25 minutes. And then when the 25 minutes was over, he would put a little check mark for one session completed. And then he would take a 3 to 5 minute break, set the timer again, and go to work. And after he finished and had 4 check marks, he would take a 15 to 30 minute break to just clear his mind, to go for a walk, to go to the bathroom, get some coffee, whatever. And then he would come back and start it over. So he would work in these sections of 4 25-minute Pomodoros is what he started calling them. That's what he called that section of time. So I started doing some research after Nano was over and I was no longer following this really great system of, focusing my time. It was like, what in the world was going on? And my husband was playing this game at the time and I cannot remember what it was called, but it was a science fiction game where you would go in and you would do a battle. And then once the battle was over, it's like a PvP battle. Once the battle was over, you would get spit back out into a waiting room until the next battle began. And so we started, instead of me setting like a 25-minute timer, we started doing this thing where it was like, okay, every time he would go into a new battle, I would start writing. And whenever he would get out, I would see how many words I got. And it was kind of like a race against myself to see if I could get more words. And we tried to pair it up with his points for his battle. And it was just kind of a fun thing to do. And there's something about adding that game aspect to the writing that like, okay, no matter what, I've got 20 minutes or I've got this specific amount of time that I'm going to focus toward my writing. And then I'm going to see what I ended up with at the end. That makes it somehow more fun, more focused, just plain more productive. And I think that for me also, it's a matter of telling myself, it doesn't matter if the words I write in this 25 minutes are any good. I may not feel like writing, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to set that 25-minute timer and I'm going to get something done no matter what. Even if it's the worst words I've ever written in my life, I'm going to focus for this 25 minutes. And I don't allow Facebook pings. I turn off, I do listen to music a lot of the time, but I turn off, Facebook Messenger. If somebody texts me, I just ignore it because this is my writing time. And I know that I have that 3 to 5 minute break afterward to answer them or to get up and get coffee or do whatever it is I need to do. So something about being able to focus my time in that manner really helps me be more productive. The way that the original Pomodoro technique went was exactly like I said. You do 4 25-minute sprints or Pomodoros with a 5-minute break in between. and then you take a longer break, like 15 to 30 minutes. Now, for me personally, I have found that I like to do 3 chunks of time and then the longer break, because going that fourth one, I usually end up with diminishing returns because I'm so tired during that fourth one. I'm just like ready for a break. So for me, I'll do 1, 2, 3, 25-minute sprints is what I call them, instead of Pomodoros, where I'm writing or working on something focused for 25 minutes, 3 times in a row. Then after the third one, I will take a 15 to 30-minute break, usually more like 15 minutes. Then I'll come back and work again. So here's where we go and we talk about how you use this to reclaim some of your writing time. Number 1, you need to identify what time you have during the day. Now, it doesn't matter if you're working a full-time job, if you've got children at home and you're a full-time mom, if you are just super busy working on the house, or if maybe you don't even have a full-time job, but you have a part-time job and you're available some days, but you're not available others. What I would recommend you do is you sit down and you figure out in your schedule, in your calendar, exactly where you have time to write the following day, or you could plan out the entire week. I try to keep up with a schedule and a routine so that I know all the time what I have, but I do sit down on Sundays and I plan out my entire week. And then I went ahead and filled this out. Usually I would do this tonight, but I did it already so that you could see it. But I use a Hobonichi, and I have they have daily pages. So every night before I go to bed, I would go through these daily pages and I would say, like, here's what I'm going to do. And I'd write out, like, I don't have any meetings or anything going on tomorrow, but if I did, I would write out the meetings and everything else. But what I have identified for tomorrow is that I have from 8 to noon to write. So that gives me 4 hours of writing time. And I may be able to find some time throughout the day later to write, but these are going to be my dedicated hours. I do this the day before, because if I get up in the morning and I don't have a specific plan for what I'm going to do that day, it's not going to get done. I will always feel too tired. I will always feel unmotivated, and it's not going to get done. But if I commit to it the night before and I say, I am writing from 8 to noon, no matter what, if I feel like it, it doesn't matter. If I don't feel like it doesn't matter, I'm going to get this writing done. So I know I have from 8 to noon. So what I will do is I will say, okay, so that's going to be me writing from 8 to 8:30. So it'll be 8 to 8:25 with a 5-minute break to 8:30. Then I'll have a second sprint from 8:30 to 8:55 with a 5-minute break. So that brings me to 9 o'clock. Then from 9 to 9:30 is sprint number 3. Then I'm going to take a break till about 10 o'clock. So that's 3 sprints. Then from 10 to 10:30, 10:30 to 11, 11 to 11:30, that gives me 6 sprints. And then usually that last sprint between 11:30 and noon is going to be another break. And that's when I'm going to check my email for the day, see if I've been tagged on Facebook and any groups that I need to respond to, and that sort of thing. So I will not check my email, my Facebook messages, nothing until that 11:30 to 12 break. And then I'll stop for lunch. So I know that during those 4 hours, I'm going to get 6 sprints done. So what I have already done is written into my planner 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sprints. And then what I will do tomorrow is write at 8 a.m. or as soon as I can after that, I will sit down and I will start my timer. Now, what I have personally is I have an app on my phone. Hopefully it'll show up a little bit. I have an app on my phone called the Writometer or Writometer. It's RWITEOMETER. I don't know if this is available on iPhones, but it is available on Android. And I have my writing, my Sacrifice Me To is what I'm working on right now. It tells me what my daily progress needs to be, my overall progress. And then up here, you'll see it has a little timer. So I will, when I'm ready to start that timer, I will click the timer and it goes for 25 minutes. Then at the end of that 25 minutes, it has a place for me to put in. It never wants me to stop it is the problem. It has a place for me to put in what word count I got. So I don't actually have to track it like this, but I like to be able to look back later on paper and see exactly what I did. Just to give you an example of how I would do this if I was doing, morning sprint. So usually on my piece of paper here, I'm going to write down, my sprints, and I'm planning to do 6. Then I'll write my starting word count. So this is just an example. So let's just say when I sat down today, my starting word count was already in the document at 27,359. So then I set my timer, I do my 25 minutes, and let's say I ended up with 28,110. So I would write down the new word count, and then I'm going to go to my calculator because I do not do math in my head. And I would just do the 28,110 minus 27,359 to get my word count for that sprint, which would have been 751. So I just write a little, like a little less than sign and a 751, which gives me the word count for that particular sprint. Then I would take my 3-minute break. I would start my timer again. And let's say I ended up with 29,052. So then I would do the little sign again, and I would say 29,052 minus 28,110, which was my previous word count, and that would give me a total for that sprint of 942. So I would also write that in. Then I would create a third column where I'm adding together those two sprints and saying 942 words plus 751 words gives me a total of 1,693 words. So if you see that, I end up with 3 columns. So what I always end up doing is saying, this first column is the actual word count in the document now. The second column is how many words I got that particular sprint. And then the third column is the total words that I've written during this entire session. That's the way I usually keep track of it, so that by the time I get down to the end, I can see. Now, what you could do is, instead of adding up those totals every single time, is you could just write down your new total word count all the way through. What you could do is, instead of adding it up or subtracting it every single time, is you could just take this final number 32,056 minus your starting word count up here at the top, which was 27,359. And you would know that during today's 6 sprints, you wrote 4,697 words. But for me, I like to see it as the day progresses. It encourages me every single time I finish a sprint to be able to say, wow, I got another 780 words, and that brings me to 2,500. Now I know I've got 2,500 to go to hit my goal, or I've got 600 left to hit my goal. I like seeing that progression as the day goes on because it encourages me to keep going. So number 1, if you want to reclaim some of your writing time, is you need to figure out where you have time during the day. So for me, like I said, it is figuring out the night before, where am I going to have time? Let's say I had a full-time job, or I had a bunch of things going on tomorrow. I would just sit down and go, okay, well, where can I reclaim a little bit of time? For you, it might be, even, especially if you're super busy, it might be something like, okay, I'm going to be waiting in the carpool line from 2 o'clock to 2:30 tomorrow. So I'm going to get that one sprint in, and I'm going to sit here and do voice dictation on my phone, or I'm going to bring my keyboard in the car and I'm going to do it during that. Or my daughter has swim team practice, so I'm going to sit on the bleachers and I'm going to write for those 2 hours while she's swimming. Whatever it is for you, you need to identify where you have time to write during the day. And I would look for those chunks of 25 minutes. We can talk about this again later, but you may find that you work better with 15-minute sprints, or some people work better with hour-long sprints when they give themselves the whole hour, but that's a matter of experimentation, and I'll cover that in another video, how you can go about experimenting with those timings. But for now, let's just say the 25-minute Pomodoro. If you can look throughout your schedule for tomorrow and say, where do I have 25-minute pockets of time, or an hour pocket of time where I can split it into 2 Pomodoros or 2 writing sprints? Once you are able to start looking at your day in that manner, and you commit to it the night before, like, okay, I have 30 minutes during my lunch break where I could eat really quickly and then take 30 minutes to write in the break room. Then you commit to it and say, that's what I'm going to do every single day. Then you sit down and you do it. That's how you start to reclaim your time. If you just tell yourself, maybe I'll sit down and do it, or I have this 3 hours when I get home from work, I guarantee you that when you get home from work, you're going to be like, I'm too tired and there was that show I really wanted to watch, and I really should also be working on this other thing I was thinking about, and I kind of want to read this book. You're just going to go off in a million different directions. There's something about making that commitment to yourself the night before where you say, this is my, if you really want to watch that TV show and you've got this book you really want to read, and you have 4 hours when you get home from work, sit down. First thing you do is say, I'm going to get these 2 writing sprints in, then I can watch that show, then I can read that book. If you don't commit to it, you're never going to do it. But if you start looking for where you can reclaim these 25 minutes here and there in your writing schedule, you're going to start seeing a lot of opportunity, and you're going to start seeing those words counts go up and up and up, because you're going to begin to really find that momentum and find that commitment that you needed. Now later, we're going to also be talking about, I'm going to show you different ways that you can track your word count overall. Like I have a wall calendar here that I track my word count. I also track it in my Hobonichi. I used to track in my bullet journal, so I'll show you that. But identify that time, use the Pomodoro technique where you set a timer. There are plenty of resources online. Like I was talking about this Write-O-Meter app that I use on my Android, so you could look that up. I can try to link it below if I remember. There's also Chrome extensions, so if you write in Google Docs or somewhere in your Chrome, there are Chrome extensions that you can download for Pomodoro where you can set the 25-minute timer. Or you know what, you can just take your phone or any other timer and click, like if I click on clock and then set my timer, I can just go start and it begins a 25-minute timer right here on my phone. You don't have to get high tech about this. You can just literally do it like that. The guy that invented this, he was using one of those kitchen timers, and I actually tried to do that, but it makes that little tick, 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 tick sound the entire 25 minutes, and it was driving me insane. So I don't use those anymore, but I did go and buy a pretty one, and then I wanted to throw it across the room. But other than that, you can just use your phone, or you can try to download an app. If you search for Pomodoro Technique, you will find several apps that you can download that will give you that timer. And not only just the 25-minute timer, but it will auto set that 5-minute break or whatever. But you'll start to see over time how you begin to reclaim that time and turn it into words. Just 25 minutes here and there. It doesn't have to be 3 hours worth of time. It doesn't have to be, huge chunks where you've got all this time. You can just literally, even if it's 10-minute sprints for you in the beginning because you're just that busy. Maybe you don't have a lot of time when your kids are napping, or you are working 3 different jobs, or you just have very little time in between. Identify the moments that you have, even if it's 10 minutes here and there in the carpool line, at swim practice, and stop giving yourself the excuse of like, I don't feel like it, or it's too hard to jump in. Train yourself to believe that the second you start that timer, it's time to write. And it doesn't matter if those words are any good. It doesn't matter if they're usable or if you're going to end up throwing them away later. Start that timer, sit down and record it. And I promise you, you will start to get into the habit of reclaiming this time for yourself. All right, guys, I hope this has helped a little bit. I am going to have another video later in the week that shows you how I use my simplified planner to use to do these Pomodoros, not just with my writing time, but with all of my marketing and everything too, so that I don't spend too much time on social media when I should be marketing. So I'm going to go over how I color code my days and my systems using this simplified planner from Emily Lay. And we'll also talk about how you can track different ways to track your daily word count so that you can see it as it begins to add up. I've got some really cool like bullet journal spreads and other things so you can see that. So I hope this has helped, and I hope that you'll go ahead and subscribe to my channel for more tips on self-publishing and how to organize your self-publishing career. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.